All right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started now. Thanks for joining the webinar on this beautiful Thursday afternoon here in Tallinn. It's finally sunny. But the purpose of this webinar is to go over SMS service quality, what it means to us, how we define it as Macenta, and to give brands and businesses an understanding of what it means to them, as well as SMS is becoming one of the most used communication channels with brands and businesses, customers, and internally as well. Before we get started, I want to introduce our panelists. We have Uku Tomikas. He is our lead sales researcher. We have Margus Sut. He is one of our key account managers, and myself, I am Yuri Mikachenko. I am the head of marketing here at Macenta. Uku and Margus have spent the last few months actually going through how we handle SMS service quality, working with our team, going through industry lingo, going through an industry research information to give a better overview to our customers and those organizations using SMS APIs, give them a better understanding of what SMS service quality means, all of the variables behind them. And I will now pass it off to Margus to get us started.
Thanks, Yuri, and hey everybody, and thanks for joining this webinar. As Yuri already started, my name is Margus. I'm working with Macenta's key customers. That means I help to maximize the SMS service benefits for large businesses that usually operate in multiple countries, as well as I'm helping to discover and inspire new use cases where we can solve their challenges through SMS operations. So today's webinar topic has been inspired by numerous of those same businesses, and they've been asking occasionally, what do we mean when we talk about the quality of SMS delivery? So Uke and I have been working on this to kind of like unwrap the details about it, what actually matters when we're talking about delivering SMS messages, as well as what are the finances behind it. So first of all, when we're talking about SMS service quality, it's very common to consider only the price and somewhat delivery quality with very minor testing. And frankly, this approach is by far very insufficient in order to be sort of happy with the service that you're working with later on. So we're here to break down what is a true delivery rate, meaning what are the main elements that actually make a difference in SMS service. So there are four elements to it. One of them being delivery rate, meaning what is the ratio of successful deliveries compared to send requests. Then there is routing and latency, which is the average amount of time between a send request and a message delivery. And there is database quality, which is the number of valid mobile numbers provided by the client. And lastly, the ability to scale the service. It's sort of like the opportunity to expand your SMS delivery to more than one country without having to choose a partner or SMS service for every country. Average delivery rates and why can't providers always deliver 100% has been one of the main questions. We take the delivery quality of SMS very seriously, and our most prominent claim is that every 1% makes the world of a difference in the economics behind SMS service costs. So that being said, cheaper price is a kind of like a slippery slope that can reduce the SMS delivery rate, meaning lost profits worth many times over than discounts on SMS price. But first of all, there are specific variables that make it practically impossible to deliver 100% of messages. So regardless of how refined or straightforward the SMS delivery system is, errors still happen. Now, based on our own experience in working with other SMS service providers globally, the average delivery rate for any SMS service provider is approximately 95%. So the 5% of undelivered messages is usually lost in the next aspects. One of them being undeliverable messages, meaning every mobile number database that we're provided or being provided includes numbers that are invalid. The other variable that contributes to the 5% is inefficient routing. So every SMS service provider needs to maintain and build the infrastructure of connections between them and the mobile operator. So meaning in that network, failures can also happen. And last but not least, every now and then softwares have bugs, which means, again, some messages can get lost in the process. So all that combined will usually make approximately 5% of failed messages. So again, our claim is that the way Mesenta approaches the SMS delivery, we have proven to increase the delivery rates. But we're talking about like 5% of failed messages on average. And I mean, 1% can make a difference. This is what we claim, but how does it actually make a world of a difference? So the 5% of average failed messages actually, so it is important. When we have talked about this with the companies we work with, we've been told that 5% delivery rate is actually okay as long as we give them the best price on the market. But hereby, we need to define what those 5% failed messages, also known as minor delivery issues, actually mean for your business. So I'll set up an example. Let's say that there's a company X. They're a fast-growing and globally expanding microfinancing service. What they do is that they give out loans very quickly within 2 minutes. So for them, verifying customers with an SMS PIN code through their own online application is the last step before they can acquire a customer. Now, let's say that the company gives out 1,000 new loans to new and existing customers every month, meaning also that at least 1,000 new PIN codes has to be delivered to customers' mobile phones in order to verify them. So meaning convert these applications to actual business. And finally, let's say that the average gross profit per loan is 200 euros. So in this very simplified example, every 1,000 converted customers would make the company 20,000 euros gross profit. So very simple, 20,000 euros worth of gross profit from 1,000 verified customers every month. Now, this is the part where every 1% of undelivered messages can do times more harm to your business than slightly higher SMS price. So in this example, 1% is simply 10 messages out of 1,000 PIN codes every month. And this seems very insignificant, right? Especially if you compare it to sort of agreeing to slightly higher SMS price, which again seems like an unreasonable cost increase to just save 10 messages on every 1,000 messages. But actually that 1% equals to 10 customers who didn't receive the PIN code. So they can't be verified, and it eventually means that it's lost profit. So in plain and simple numbers, every 1% of undelivered PIN codes for this business is actually 2,000 euros of lost profit every month. So it's very common to prefer lower SMS price and risk with minor delivery issues than pay slightly more for higher delivery. But actually the finances behind it are more important in that sense. So we say that focusing on lower prices in most cases vastly counterproductive. More so, the bigger the traffic, the loss of potential profits gets exponentially higher. So what can be done? Based on Mesenta's approach to delivery quality, we increased the delivery rate approximately 3% from the average. So meaning out of all deliverable messages, we deliver up to 98%. And so by doing so, we help businesses to maximize their possible earnings. But this microfinancing example is just one of them. There are so many different other examples, not only financial services. For example, many of the businesses we work with offer global customer relationship management softwares. So for them, every missed appointment has on average 100 euros alternative cost. So that's 1,000 euros loss per 10 missed appointment reminders. SMS is known to be one of the best marketing channels due to its incomparably high open rate. So a realistic conversion rate for marketing messages would be 5%, and let's say that each conversion yields to 50 euros. So that's 5,000 euros missed in SMS marketing conversion. There's another thing that the losses are not necessarily coming from transactions like this. In case of just 1% of lower delivery rate, your customer service has to deal with this. So meaning that someone will have to deal with the customers who are not receiving PIN codes, and someone needs to deal with your service provider who is not delivering those messages. So every 2,000 undelivered PIN codes, your business loses 300 up to 600 euros, considering that 15 euros would be the cost of customer service. So to conclude this, well, SMS seems simple. The service quality is more complex than delivery rate and the price you're paying per SMS. Secondly, focusing on actual delivery rate is far more rewarding for your profits than trying to negotiate the cheapest price possible, since poor delivery quality means direct loss in profits. Thirdly, a good SMS service is something you forget about. The more support time you have to allocate, the larger the indirect costs grow in terms of man hours. So to conclude all this, we're helping a lot of businesses to fine-tune their SMS operations and to maximize their potential profits dependent on SMS operations. Now, how exactly we do this, Uku will tell you more.
Thanks, Margus, and hi, everybody. So I'll be talking a little bit about some of the things that we do and some of the systems that we utilize in order to achieve that, 3% higher delivery rate than the market average of 95. How do we make that jump from 95 to 98%? So the first and foremost thing that I'd like to talk about is the connections themselves, the routes that we use. So in these things, you need to understand that there is a myriad of ways to deliver a single SMS. So I'll give you an example like this. For example, you want to send a message from Estonia to, let's say, Poland. Now, the partner you utilize in Estonia or that you have in Estonia has a partner that helps them with their delivery in Europe. Let's say they're a smaller company, so they're utilizing somebody bigger, and that bigger company has their own partner for their Polish operation. So just to send out this one message, you're going to send it from your system to your service provider, who sends it to a partner, who sends it to a partner, who sends it to another partner in the other end, at this instance being a telco. So it's already a fairly long loop. And whenever you have this sort of a multiple link situation, a multiple link connection, you're going to inevitably stumble upon those difficulties that Margus mentioned in the beginning. So software problems, you might get some packets missing, you might get different faults in the systems, not to mention some of the other things that we'll come back to later, such as throughput, latency, and message priority. So to subvert this, what we do is we utilize direct connections to telco partners whenever it's possible. So for example, in the Baltics, we're connected to every single partner, every single operator directly, as well as most of Eastern Europe. Now, this is incredibly crucial because these connections are of the highest quality. This means that we're working directly with the operators who directly send the message that you're trying to send to the mast. So there is as small of a link as possible. Now, while this is an ideal solution, this solution isn't available everywhere in the world. So let's say that we would like to go into the Ukrainian market per se. I'm not claiming that it's currently like that there, but let's just use this as an example. For example, they don't let foreign countries utilize direct connections to telcos, either because of legislation differences. All the telcos themselves prefer to work with only local operators or local partners. And in these situations, any company coming from outside and trying to provide a global service will have to inevitably work with a local partner in order to have that connection ability into that particular market. And these are considered the one-hop connections, when there is one single hop between you and us, the partner, and the telco. And these connections, because there is a plethora of them. Let's say, for example, again, in the Ukrainian example, you might have 10 different partners in the same country offering connections directly into every single telco. So in these situations, you need to understand which type of connections are the highest quality, which ones are the most reliable, which ones have the smallest latency, meaning the smallest time from message request to our system and ending up in actual message delivery. So you need to understand these particular aspects and choose the best possible connection for delivering business critical messages. And this, of course, means that we need to constantly and consistently test every single connection and understand how these things work, shift traffic from one side to the other to understand how these things work, and actually build up a library of connections that are reliable, trustworthy, and that we can use over a period of time, and then retest to understand them even better. And in order to do this automatically, so it doesn't take hours upon hours of manual input, we use an adaptive routing system. What this means is that our system will choose the best possible route for delivering business critical messages. And if that route for some reason experiences difficulties, let's say that it has a high latency, or messages that are sent through that pipeline or that particular connection start failing, in that particular instance, our system will automatically switch over to an alternative route that is, in our library, the second best connection that is possible, to ensure that all messages get delivered in each particular case. And in order to have this sort of a system built up, you need to have a lot of partners as well. So we have around 800 partners around the world who we work with constantly, who we test, prioritize, and understand which types of connections are the best to go with at any given time, giving us flexibility to work through emergencies and peak times as well. And this brings us to the second topic I wanted to talk about a little bit further, which is partner agreements. Now, in order to understand how partner connection works, you need to test it. In order to have the best possible quality out of that particular connection, you need your partner to understand what type of transaction you're having with them. In our case, what type of messages are we sending? So there's a difference between sending marketing messages or PIN codes or transactional confirmations that need to be delivered as fast as possible. And these partnership agreements really boil down to three major aspects: priority, latency, and throughput. Now, priority means that we have agreements in place that take delivery priority into account, so that messages like PIN codes are sent first, and our own system prioritizes similarly. So what this means is that, let's take this particular example first. As Marcus mentioned, we have Company X, a microfinancing company, and they want to send out a campaign of 1 million messages to, let's say, Estonia. And in this particular case, they want to send all of the million messages out immediately. Now, every single connection has its limitations. Usually an industry standard would be, let's say, from 20 messages a second to a few hundred messages a second. And in that ballpark, we're talking about, let's say, from 50,000 to, let's say, 500,000 messages in an hour. I think that my math is a slight bit off, but those are the ballpark figures you need to understand in order to put this thing into perspective. So if you want to send out 1 million messages and you have a throughput of maybe sending out 500,000 messages an hour, sending those 1 million messages out will take 2 hours. Now, if you don't have priority in place, your PIN codes will be stuck behind those marketing messages for 2 hours. So you need to understand what types of messages you're sending, what type of connections need to be set up, and what type of message priority needs to be set up, so that those PIN codes and those transactional messages reach the people at a right time, because no one wants to wait 2 hours in order to complete their transaction, right? So priority is very, very important, not only in our own system, but making sure that our partners understand what types of traffic we are actually delivering and what is the priority that we need in this particular cases. Now, not only do you need to have your priority agreement set with partners, you also need throughput. Throughput is the amount of messages you can send in a second. As I mentioned, industry standards are between 20 to a few hundred messages. Now, in order to get to those few hundred messages, you need to actually have thorough conversations with telco partners. You need to explain why you need a maximum amount of throughput, why you need to have these connections in place, why do you need to work with this particular connection while others might be working with lesser connections and doing just fine and getting through with a lot less throughput, for example. In our case, we need to elaborate that we need low latency, meaning low delivery time, in peak times and in extreme events. For example, we work with global messaging companies, or global alerts companies rather, that deal with emergency alerts. So for example, if there's a tsunami warning, if there's a hurricane warning, if there's a huge electricity outage, something like that, you're going to need to deliver a plethora of messages, a few 100,000 messages maybe, in a matter of minutes. So you're going to have in place a system in which you're able to send a lot of messages quickly and efficiently. And for this, we need to have our connections with place with telco partners and other hubs as well, in order so we could use as many connections as possible. In the case where we need to send a few 100,000 messages in say minutes, we need to use every single partner we have in that particular country. Let's say in the Ukraine example, we can push through 10 different partners simultaneously, let's say. And in this situation, you won't have, your usual 20 to a few hundred messages a second. You'll have 200 to a few thousand messages a second. And this greatly increases your ability to deliver messages quickly and efficiently. And these things together, both priority and throughput, lead to latency. Latency meaning that they combine as a direct connection and minimize the time of delivering each and every single message. And as we work with our partners in these particular ways, when we discuss these topics, when we ask for better priority and ask for more throughput and have these agreements in place, we also need to understand our customers a little bit better, which brings me to the last topic I'm going to talk about, meaning customer support and scaling. In these particular cases, we not only need to understand, or our partners rather need to understand what we do, what types of messages we're sending, but we need to understand what types of messages our clients are sending. So what is the use case? What is the particular most efficient way of delivering your messages? What is most important to you? In these cases, people like Margus and me come in and we help to understand what types of connections you would best be suited for, what would be the best way to set up your account, what would be the priorities we have in place in order to ensure as proper of a delivery as possible, to make sure that you get the maximum amount of that, let's say, extra 3% that you're getting, and that your end profits are as large as possible when you consider your SMS service and what you're using. And for these particular cases, you're going to need a personal touch as well. So a real person like me and Margus is pretty much provided to every single customer, as it is important for us to understand and do the necessary tasks on our end to set up the accounts as needed. Another thing that Margus mentioned in the beginning was that messages can be categorized as deliverable and undeliverable, meaning it all depends on your database quality. What this means is that not every database that you have is 100% accurate. So there are going to be some problems with data input. There are going to be some minor difficulties, let's say with converting one file from one to the other. You might have area codes on one and area codes on another one. And you might have these different types of issues that bring about database quality issues. What this usually means is that about 5% of your database is filled with invalid numbers. That is the sort of the average that we seem to stumble upon. In addition to that, you're going to have around 3% numbers are roaming as well, either who are traveling or so on and so forth. What this means is before you actually get to the part where our connections come into play, in this particular case, you're already lost 8% of the messages you're trying to deliver. And if you haven't cleaned your database beforehand, that will seem to you like a delivery quality issue. So if you have our 98% delivery, and then you have the loss of 2% from there, and then you have another 8% losing from your database quality, that drives your delivery down to 90%, not 100 or not even 95. And if you're using an industry standard connection of 95%, then you're already at 87% as your total delivery rate. So this is going to affect your business quite heavily. And to actually mitigate the damage that this does, we've built the number lookup API that pings a phone to make sure it's a valid number, which is a fraction of the cost of a standard SMS. So you'll take your database, you'll upload it, you will send it through our number lookup API, and that particular tool will tell you how many are invalid, how many are roaming. And you can take this into consideration for a fraction of the cost, and then send out your particular campaign, making sure that the database you're sending out, you're not losing money off of that due to sending to invalid numbers. some people also seem to think that when you have invalid numbers in your database, then you won't be charged for those numbers. That is a fallacy, because we attempt to send to each and every number as we put out the request to every single operator. And as operators charge us per request, we do the same for clients. So in this particular case, if you have invalid numbers in your database, you're going to be charged for them as well, unless you use a tool like the Number Lookup API to make sure that you have your database cleaned up a little bit better. So in conclusion, we ensure delivery quality by using direct and high quality partner connections, test constantly and consistently, and utilize an adaptive routing system in case of failures. We have agreements in place to ensure priority, low latency, and high throughput, and support our customers by helping to clean databases and provide a personal account manager as standard. And that's it from my side.
Awesome, thanks, Ugu. So I do want to open it up for questions. If anyone's got questions, there's a questions panel below in the GoToWebinar app on your desktop or mobile phone. But thanks, Ugu and Margus, for presenting the information here. I think it was pretty straightforward. I didn't see any questions come up during the webinar, but I'll give it. Actually, I found we do have a question. Here we go. We have a question. Let's field it to someone. Can the Number Lookup API be called at any time? And what is the approximate time in which the validity of the number can be confirmed? Ugu?
That's a good question. Now, I don't know the particular time it would take, but as much as I understand, it can be used at any given time, as the recipient itself won't see that their number is being pinged, so the recipient won't have a problem with it. It's not like sending a usual SMS. And as for the request, I think it should be something around the same lines as sending an SMS. So it's, let's say, around 20 to a few hundred messages a second. So having let's say a database of 100,000 messages might take, let's say, 10 minutes or something like that. Those should be the ballpark estimates, though for a specific answer, I would gladly come back to anyone who's interested in it if this didn't answer your question reliably.
Yeah, does that answer the question? Let us know. I'm on the questions section. I can possibly. But one of the things that I remember talking about with you, Uku, is how often we recommend our customers to run the Number Lookup API. And what was that?
Well, I'd ultimately run it for every single campaign you do, regardless of size, because the cost benefit is there, right? And running your database through it on a regular basis depends really on how much messages you send out. So what's your traffic? If you're sending maybe 10 messages a day, maybe you'll need to do it once a week. If you're sending 10 million messages a day, you're probably going to need to do it a few times a day. So it really depends on your use case. And in this particular case, having one of our partners like me and Margus in place to advise would probably be best in that particular case, as it goes case by case.
That's a good point. Yeah, talk to you.
Yeah, go ahead, Margus. Yeah, it very much depends on the industry as well. We gave an example about like a microfinancing company. There's a tendency in some industries where mobile numbers in databases, the clients might have a little less motivation to provide the correct numbers. So that's very much connected to the debt collection, for example, or anything else actually. So in terms of industries, it might vary, and we strongly suggest anyone who knows that their number databases might include more invalid numbers to use the Number Lookup API. It's just very, very economically, it's very efficient.
Yeah, and it could depend on how often your database actually changes, how many times a month or a week or day new numbers are added too. So yeah,
exactly.
It depends on the use case. Yeah, so we had a follow-up question. Would it be possible to add a specific SMS ID for reports in the API in the Mesenta portal? So actually, Yudis, I will follow up with you on that question, and I will for more details on it. And it could be a request we send to our development team to add a feature to our dashboard. So I'm going to make note of that question specifically. And the next question we got is, do we have a feature where customers can unsubscribe when they receive an SMS campaign. And Ukumaragos, I think I know the answer to that, but I'll let you guys answer it. It's about unsubscribing an SMS campaign.
No particular sort of like feature for this. It would be relatively, in that sense, that there's no point of building this. Rather, is that the different databases, how do you update, how customers update their databases might be different. But we're always up to hearing suggestions, and if sort of we can narrow it down, like how companies build their databases, we can see if there's any possibilities for us to actually build a tool that automatically, let's say, blacklists mobile numbers that want to unsubscribe. But the question about unsubscribing is that this is different, like from which database they want to unsubscribe. Do they want to unsubscribe from all of them or just one of them? Is it like a certain period? So there are a lot of variables that might change this. So short answer is that we don't have a feature like this anymore. Sorry, not yet at least, but we'll definitely consider this, as our IT and the development side is always interested to hear new ideas.
Yeah, so like the unsubscribe features that I've seen with SMS marketing campaigns, for example, they just send a follow-up message saying, if you want this to stop, just reply stop as an unsubscribe, or they add a link to the message itself, which is usually a shortened link, not to take too many characters. But in that case, usually the people will add the link into their message itself to unsubscribe, or send a message to stop, which is two-way SMS. So that's a good question as well. We'll follow up with you on that one as well.